I'd now like to turn to our final speaker, last but not least, certainly, Igor Matutinovic, who is an ecological economist from Zagreb University, and he's written studies on a wide range of issues such as sustainability, self-organization and planning in capitalist economies, energy consumption and social imbalance, the ecological prospects of our economies, etc. And this evening, he's going to speak to us. It's about economic growth, prosperity, and resilience beyond myth and messianism. Just repeating this in Greek now. So, Igor, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening. I guess that you must be pretty tired after 1.5 hours, but these were really very insightful presentations so far, so I will try to contribute from my side. Actually, my talk will continue to the first talk of Mauro. I will talk about degrowth from a little bit different perspective, and I will concentrate more on the short term and medium term and our actual problems that I address in Croatia and in Greece. Why this title? Actually, I wanted to emphasize in a metaphorical way that the myth of unbounded growth is nothing else but a myth. It is biophysical impossibility, as Mauro initially said, and messianism is here just to emphasize that there are no easy solutions. There are no quick and dirty short solutions to the problems that we have incurred in the economical way and also in the environmental way. So solutions are mostly in the longer term, and we have to have patience and wisdom in order to reach them. So, okay, problem setting, a bit of theory to understand how the solutions can be framed, and socioeconomic tinkering as an idea how we could deal with the current problems. So you know very well the problems in Greece. They are similar to problems in Croatia, although much less pronounced. So I don't want to go into detail about these sad numbers that you know very well, but I would just like to emphasize two things. First is huge unemployment with a huge proportion of young people in the unemployed. And the second is huge debt. And if we want to remain as members of the community, you know that Croatia will enter the European Union in July. So if you want to stay Greece in Euro, all of us in European Union, and all of us more or less in the international economic system, unless we want to close our economies like Albania did 50 years ago, then we have to address internally first this huge social problem of unemployment, and externally the problem of outstanding debt, which if it is not paid, it will create problems in the future of credibility, problems of financing some more important needs than those which has been financed in the times of debt creation, and probably even more problems in times where economic cooperation, and especially cooperation among nations and people in Europe, should be increasing and not decreasing by excluding some countries out of cooperation and out of political discourse. Another thing that is characteristic of Croatia and Greece is this disinvestment. So you see that share of investment in GDP has been decreasing or decreased quite sharply between 2008 and 2012, and equally in Croatia and in Greece. Another one is the competitiveness ranking. As I said before, if we do not want to be excluded from the international community, then we cannot disregard the importance of competitiveness in international terms. So you see, we have created debt, and in the meantime, with this debt, we did not create stronger economies, more competitive economies that will help us repaying the debt. And actually, this is one sad and common problem for both countries. Also, on the social side, there are similar social indicators. As you see, Greece, the population between poverty line in Greece and Croatia is the same, and distribution of family income measured by Gini index, which measures the degree of inequality in a society, is also the same. And as you see, because Gini index, as is decreasing, the society becomes more equal. There is Sweden that could give us a good example, a good benchmark where we could lead our societies in terms of better equality, which on the other hand creates more social cohesion and more social stability. And also you see that Croatia, being in the 5th year of recession, has very dissatisfied population in terms of their standard of living and in terms of their received income. And I believe the same, if not worse, is in Greece. What is the context of concern of the population in general and for political parties of voters? These are results of study of JFK Institute in the 27 world economies, and it shows, it was conducted in 2012, that people are mostly concerned with economic woes, with economic issues, economic problems. In Croatia, this is very clear. As you see, all major economic concerns are not on the environmental side, on the side of climate change, biodiversity, or whatever. It is on the economic survival. Is this also for Greece? Some very recent research shows that also in Greece, economic issues are of primary importance. And this gives a political context for degrowth. I think that I skipped a slide showing what I take as a degrowth, like an idea, like a linguistic tool, which should shatter the idea, this strongly culturally embedded idea of growth, that we should start thinking in different terms, not yet as a concrete political program that we can implement tomorrow, but as an idea which has to be used to shatter these established beliefs that the only possible way of functioning is through growth, which you know and you have learned so far is not possible. If we look, so we have seen internal problems, internal initiating conditions, as to say. If we take a broader look, then we see that on external conditions, one of the most important is global warming. I have taken this cover of Bloomberg Business Week on intention just to show how business community has become sensitive to this issue, because it is now the business community that is telling the world it's global warming stupid. So all those people who don't believe that the effects of Hurricane Sandy is not connected to global warming and its consequences is a little bit out of mind. And global warming, I will come back to this, is bringing a lot of problems in the future, especially to Mediterranean countries. We will be having drier summers, less rain. We will be having problems with our crop productivity. There will be problems with irrigation, with water. And in winters, perhaps less in Greece, but more in Croatia, which is more north, we'll be having problems with extreme temperatures. Extreme temperatures both in winter and both in summer. On the other hand, as Mauro already said, we are approaching peaks in production of fossil fuels. As you can see from this graphicon, which was published recently in Nature, here you have a price, and here you have production. And you see that production has been stable even if price has been increasing. This is a clear sign that we are reaching material limits in production of conventional oil. And very similar findings have been published 2 years ago concerning coal. So even coal is approaching its limits. It's not that there is no coal, but it is ever more difficult to extract economically and energetically coal. So this is another constraint which is coming from the wider environment and which will be influencing both Croatian and Greek economies and the life of citizens. In what way? First, energy costs will increase. It will burden further already impoverished budgets of the population. Second, transport costs will increase. This will be a burden on the budget, but it will also create a push in a society, perhaps to change the ways that we are using personal and urban transport, which in turn will ask for new investments because, you know, our cities and our public transport, not in every place, but in most of the cities, is not adequate to the increased demand for public transport, which may come out of increased price for private transport and transfer from private to public. And who will suffer the most? Those who are employed, those who are in lower income strata. So again, we have a combination of economic and environmental trends or biophysical trends like peak oil, which are closely connected to the social issues. I have an impression, this is because of the PowerPoint, I skipped some, oh no, okay, it's coming down. Okay, so all these problems are interconnected. They are systemic and they are global. And ecological economics looks it through three interconnected perspectives or systems: economy, society, and environment. When we talk about sustainability or when we talk about crisis in a society, it doesn't matter from which domain the crisis starts, environment, economy, or social. It is the same, because the goal of our civilization and of all of us is to keep societies as stable as possible. So we want to lead normal lives. We don't want to have things that happened, for example, in ex-Yugoslavia in the 90s. So we want to keep all these three domains under certain control. Well, and now we are encountering the first problem. This is the problem of complexity of this system. On the biophysical side, economies are embedded in ecologies. We are embedded in ecosystems. We function because ecosystem functions. And ecologists are embedded in the wider world ecological system, which we can call now biosphere. It's not precise, but doesn't matter. Just to show this interconnectedness and interdependence. Also, our economic behavior is dependent in the same way on the institutions in our societies, and institutions in our societies are dependent on our culture. And I will tell you more in detail, because this is important to see and to understand how we can bring change, how we can transform from the growth economy to the degrowth or steady state economy. It is not easy, and why it is not easy, I will try to explain now. So we have a society which is embedded in an environment. So we take all our resources and we use the environment to absorb our waste and heat. So if we destroy the environment, our societies will not be able to function. This is clear. When we look at the human subsystem, then we see that our worldview, our values, our beliefs define what are our institutions. And both they define what technologies we use. I cannot go into detail, but we can discuss this later. The institutions and technology define our patterns of production and consumption. That means the way our economies work every day. And we have firms and households which are entering this process, economic process, and which is, as shown here, constrained by institutions and technology. The message to take home is that if we want to change economic dynamics, and changing economic dynamics, this is exactly this issue between growth and degrowth. We have to change our institutions. And in order to change our institutions, we first have to change our worldview. And worldview is a slow changing variable compared to these other variables. As you know, economic dynamics change from day to day or from month to month. Our institutions change a little bit slowly, and our system of values and beliefs perhaps takes generations. The example is China, the great leap between 1980 and 2010, which initiated with Deng Xiaoping reforms. The world populated by bicycles, healthy in terms of environmental pollution in Beijing especially, and what they have created in 20 years after adopting capitalist institutions and generating growth with these capitalist institutions. It was easy to move from the bicycle to congested streets. Now the question is, can we move backwards? I think it is much more difficult than that. Now, just a few slides about complex systems. What characterizes complex systems is emergence, novelty, that means things that appear and that we could not recognize in advance that they will appear in a certain form or that they will appear at all. And this is connected with unpredictability, the law of unintended consequences. When you do something in a complex system with aim to change, to achieve something, and then something completely different appears, or you have side effects that you have not think about. And this is connected with the radical uncertainty. That means that we cannot govern, we cannot manage ecosystems and societies in a completely, not nearly in a predictable way, or in a way, when we talk about our societies, that is rational. So, for example, we understand that we have a lot of economic and social and institutional inefficiencies. And one would say, okay, let's see what are key problems here, and let's rationally solve it. And let's say institute a completely new set of institutions that would govern our economies. The example of that was the socialist revolution in Russia. The example of that was self-management in Yugoslavia. All these systems, at the end, didn't work as it was intended, for a variety of reasons that couldn't have been predicted at the moment when these changes were initiated by political elites. However, emergence and novelty as property of complex systems gives us the hope of opportunity. That means there are things, there are trends that we may be aware or not aware of that could help us in the future, but there is no certainty of that. So there is always, in this complexity, there's embedded always something good and something, let's say, dangerous. And this property of unpredictability and radical uncertainty gives us the warning and the sense of humility and cautious action. We cannot be sure that if we want to change a system for better, or we have a very good intentions, that we will really do it. So we have to be very careful. And that is the idea which goes back to Karl Popper and his book from 57, in which he criticized totalitarian systems, and he said, we have to do a socioeconomic engineering in terms of piecemeal changes. Piecemeal changes that we should not attempt to change the system at once. We should try to better the system little by little, hoping that we will manage without the certainty. Another thing when we talk about complex systems is these multiple perspectives. That means it is impossible to describe the working of an economy from one single theory. So even now what I'm talking about could be complemented with different views. let's say, in some way, all what we have been talking up to now is complementary. We are talking about same things from different perspectives with different focuses. And this is how we approach complex system. Accumulation of historical contingencies means exactly that we cannot change the system because the system has its own historical frictions. That means if we have had capitalist development in the last 300 years, since the Industrial Revolution, say, but it started at least 2 centuries before, then we cannot change it overnight. Even if there would be very rational reasons to do it, there are many frictions, many barriers to this change. And we have to understand and not attempt to do things which are either impossible or impose a very large cost on the society. If you remember, for example, the Russian Revolution imposed extreme cost on the society in terms of suffering of the population and human lives. They wanted just to change the system, even contrary to what Marx predicted. So they just wanted to arbitrarily change the system. It is not advisable. So it is possible on the short term, but as you see, the system reverted back, and it is not advisable because of huge potential human suffering. And the last thing, which is very, for me, motivating, and I would address it in the context of the previous speakers, local fluctuations drive system evolution. What does it mean? The very fact that we are meeting here, that we are listening to each other, you will return back to your homes and to your jobs, to your political activities with some different ideas. We are generating something. Or the NGOs, which are performing concrete actions or education, whatever alternative is happening, what we have been hearing so far, these are these local fluctuations. And we cannot know in advance what these local fluctuations will produce, but these local fluctuations are actually driving the evolution of the system. This comes from the evolutionary biology, and I think it is also true for socioeconomic systems. So even if we are a small group, it makes sense to participate, it makes sense to talk about these things, to spread new ideas. Okay, I will now skip this because we are getting late, and very quickly, this comes from the process ecology. This theory, and these brackets shouldn't confuse you, these brackets are showing functional interdependence, and they show how system is interconnected, okay, functionally. What does it mean? An ecosystem grows and develops always until a certain limit, which is ultimately governed by the amount of energy that comes from sun. This growth and development comes because diverse and redundant agents, and these are species engaged in cooperative and competitive processes which exist in ecologies, and create organization, create some efficiencies, and create centripetality. This is asymmetric assimilation of resources. What does it mean for economists? That means that firms and households with capitalist institutions generate market processes. Market processes are not only competition, there is also a lot of cooperation in market processes. Market processes generate efficiency. That is technological development, for example. Organization, that is all what Laura said, the societies as are growing, they are growing more complex because of diversification. Diversification and interdependence between different parts of a system are exactly organization. And they generate also asymmetries. These are inequalities in the economic strength and inequalities in the distribution of income. And then we have GDP growth and economic and technological development. And of course, this is nice things to have. So all the gadgets, the fact that I could fly here, that couldn't be possible, let's say, 100 years ago to do it. But there is a fundamental problem which does not exist in ecosystems, exists only in human systems, in economies. This is the problem, sorry. This is the problem. Okay, it doesn't work. Okay, this is the problem, that economies tend to overgrow the substrate, the ecological systems who are supporting it. So definitively, we cannot grow forever. And the question is, even if the current size of the economy in the global sense is sustainable. We cannot know that for sure, but there are indicators that on the global scale, we should really degrow. But degrow which way? On the one hand, we have this degrowth paradigm which would say that we should stabilize our economic processes and output at the lower level than present. The other says that perhaps we should grow more, we don't know how much more, and then stabilize. So everybody, basically, except crazy neoclassical economists, which are decreasing in their numbers, agree that at some time we have to stop growing. So the question is whether to decrease and stabilize or increase and then stabilize. But it is no doubt that West at some point in time should decrease in order to allow to southern countries to increase, to get out of the poverty, like India, China, and Africa. Alternative, of course, is collapse. Yeah, if we don't recognize the biophysical limits and just pursue business as usual, at the end, the larger environment, which is controlling actually our capacities to function, will come on us, and we will have a much larger problem than today. And so I will come finally to Greece and to Croatia at the same time. The problem that we have today in Greece is that this huge unemployment rate, this real big public debt and external debt are corrupting social peace and stability, and what I said before, corrupting the possibility that Greece continues to be an equal member of the international economic community with all its benefits and with all its dangers that it brings. On the other hand, climate change and increasing energy prices will worsen the current economic situation in both Greece and Croatia. As I said, droughts, higher incidence of heat, rising energy prices, and as a consequence also rising food prices, these will all tax heavily on the population and on the most population which is earning less income. So the rich will not care, but most of the population, and especially the poor and unemployed, will suffer greatly. So austerity is certainly not a solution. We have seen that there has been disinvestment in Greece and in Croatia, and this is my recommendation for both Greece and Croatia: new investments to reduce unemployment, especially youth, increase quality of life, reduce trade deficits, and so on. But which investments? I learned today that Greek government decided 2 days ago that they will make new incentives for foreign investors, so to attract money, to attract new capital in order to increase economic activity, to reduce employment. The same thing is happening in Croatia. Although I don't know for Greece, but in Croatia, this law has been very much criticized because it completely disregarded the environment. So the idea was, let's get any foreign investment and let's do whatever that can bring money in the economy and short-term employment, whatever the consequences for the environment. Even let's sell the water wells, whatever we can do just to have growth. So in my opinion, this is crazy. This will not help us to deal with the problems of climate change and increasing energy prices due to peaking of fossil fuel fossil fuels. So now I will go through it very quickly. We can discuss later. There is a host of policies which are related to industrial policy, related as its ultimate aim to green growth, which are at the same time providing necessary infrastructure and economic changes with view of these constraints, climate change and increasing energy prices, and at the same time solving the urgent problem of unemployment, debt servicing, and so on. So, very quickly, I will not now discuss it, you just take a look at it, because this is really not nuclear science. This is something that is very down to earth. It is workable both in Greece and both in Croatia. It can have, as my colleague said before, negative effects, but we as humans, we somehow manage to go off the road from whatever good intentions. There will be always tendencies to use it in a corrupted ways, to use it in a very selfish ways. So anything can be misused, but basically, if we just attract investments in Greece and in Croatia to continue business as usual, and we disregard the changes that are looming at the door, climate and energy, then we are missing the chance at this very moment to do something for the future. And then we will be paying this afterwards much more heavily. So it just says that wherever we invest with certain targets, it will spread through the whole economy. And for the end, just as I said before, this is the last slide, I am talking about short and medium term. In the long term, which concerns substantial change and also concerns degrowth, we first have to change our mind, to change this obsession with materialistic values, and change at all completely this obsession that we can function only by growing. We have to accept high energy prices. Without high energy prices, we cannot change the basic functioning of our economies. If we want the energy cheap and decarbonized and green, this simply doesn't go together. So once we accept different value system, once we accept that energy prices will be high forever, metaphorically speaking, we can introduce oil tax. With oil tax, we can stabilize flows in the economy and redirect them towards green energy production, towards different lifestyles. So from using private cars to using public transport and so on. We need government to help us with that. Government which accounts between 40 and 60% of the GDP can streamline a lot of different investment, and it can streamline a lot of technological development in this direction, if it wants. And if we have all this, then we will have changes in behavior of firms, changes in behavior of households, that means changes, major changes in lifestyles, and then we will have different economic dynamics, different economic behavior, which would be called more environmentally friendly and more socially responsible.